Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. My name is Caroline Colas, and I'm the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan, and your host today on the Positive Psychology Hour. We are going to be talking with Scott Simon about Scare Your Soul, learning to harness our fears and lead our most courageous lives. We all know that joy, resilience, meaning, growth, and connection lead us to a happier life. But a courage practice is the key that unlocks them all. Like a muscle, courage grows stronger the more we exercise it. The Scare Your Soul movement, rooted deeply in the tenets of positive psychology, is a powerful guide to taking small, boundary-pushing actions to expand your comfort zone. Scott is going to invite us today to consider practical ways to be courageous every single day and help others to do so as well. And in doing this, we're going to be able to live a more audacious, courageous, and meaningful and connected life. A little bit about Scott. He's a happiness entrepreneur, speaker, and founder of the Scare Your Soul movement, which is a movement that inspires individual and global change through small acts of courage. He has spoken around the world, motivated people at schools and companies, given a TEDx talk, co-founded a happiness incubator, and studied and worked with international thought leaders in the areas of courage and happiness. He's a high-performance coach, focusing primarily on creating flourishing lives post-divorce, leads mindfulness meditations, and has served as an officiant of numerous weddings. Scott earned his BA from Skidmore College, his MA, let me just take 1 second. Howard, I'm going to mute you. He was BA from Skidmore, and let's see, where are we? His MA from Case Western Reserve University, and certificates in positive psychology from the Whole Being Institute. He's also the proud father of 2 children, and when not out fulfilling his sense of wanderlust, he lives where he is calling in from today in Cleveland, Ohio. Scott, welcome to the call. I'm just going to add you. And can you tell me, gosh, this is an exciting time because your book, right, was the pub date last Tuesday, you said?
Pub date was last Tuesday. One of the
gosh.
most magical days I can ever remember. It was just absolutely beyond belief.
Wow. And how's the book doing?
I think it's doing great. We had an event here. I live in Cleveland, Ohio, as Caroline mentioned, and we had 150 people in a room that held about 120 for launch day, and sold 555 books, and they ran out of books actually that night. So I say that in all humility. It was a huge surprise to me. But I think, honestly, the messages of positive psychology, the messages of courage and consistent action to move the needle in our lives feels very relevant right now. Let's put it that way in the world that we live in. So I just feel just incredibly blessed and lucky, and it's been a wonderful week.
Well, it's nice to meet you right at the cusp of sort of a peak experience. And, congratulations. I see some people on the call applauding and exciting. And we know that in positive psychology, elevating someone's success is part of creating meaningful relationships. So we celebrate you, and we're so excited to meet you on this auspicious day and week and time in your life. Can I just ask you quickly before you get started on courage, because it takes courage to start a courage movement. How did you get right? How did you get engaged or involved with positive psychology in the first place?
So positive psychology, first of all, is the foundation of my life. And I came to it in a really interesting and surprising way. I was at a yoga retreat at a wonderful place called Kripalu in Lenox, Massachusetts. Some of you may know of it. You may have been there. And I was there actually on a yoga retreat with my girlfriend, and we were waiting for this yoga retreat to begin. It was a weekend retreat, and there was a snafu. There was some sort of a problem with the registration. So I went down to the front desk, and I love that place dearly. Went down to the front desk, and they said, well, we're terribly sorry, and it's overbooked. Can we book you into something else? And I thought, oh, geez, I came all of this way from Ohio to Massachusetts, and we drove, and it took us 8 hours. What do you have available? And everything was sold out except for a weekend immersion with Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar talking about the basics of positive psychology. And I kind of went, well, I guess if we have to, well, that's what we'll do for the weekend. And I walked into that hall that is now one of the most important places, I think, in my life. And within about 10 minutes of Tal beginning his presentation, I knew that I had found the passion in my life. And I'll tell the group a little bit more about my story and the story of Scare Your Soul. Someone just chatted what the name of the book is. The name of the book is called Scare Your Soul. It's the same name as the Courage movement I started. It is a very strange and odd title, and I will explain it to this group. But that experience of meeting Tal for that weekend, finding this beautiful, beautiful practice of what does it actually mean to be happy in our lives? What does it mean to study the interventions that exist that can make us happier in life? Who are these tremendous people, these incredible academic heavyweights that are doing this? And could I somehow play a role in this in my life? I left completely jazzed, changed, then ended up coming back and doing the certificate program, the certificate in positive psychology program with the Whole Being Institute and with Tal. He's a mentor of mine. He actually wrote a beautiful endorsement for the book, which was one of the happiest parts of this whole experience, was having him read the book and provide this beautiful quote. So that was my very surprising initiation to positive psychology.
Wow, what an introduction. And Barbara Fredrickson talks about how we can meet strangers or walk into different situations and be elevated by them and also have our lives changed. And it sounds like that's what happened to you. How about if we dive in and you give us some context for courage? And I'm going to look for your book so that I can put a link in the chat, because I think there's folks on the call are going to want to take a look at that and maybe even purchase it.
That's great. Thank you so much. Well, first off, I want to thank all of you for attending. Thank you for spending a little bit of your time today talking about a subject which I think is one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves, which is, what does it mean to lead a courageous life? How do we achieve it? And what happens on the other side of fear when we push through? So I'd like to begin by showing you a card that my wonderful ex-wife and co-parent Laura gave me a number of years ago. And I don't know if you can see it, but it says, "What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail?" And it's a beautiful card, and I've had it on my desk for many, many years. But I think that the question that it begs is really a deep and interesting one. What life could we possibly lead if we did not let toxic fear, that ruminating fear, the fear that is born of past traumas or past experiences, and that hold us back from the kind of vibrant, flourishing life that positive psychology talks about? What does that life look like? And can we somehow plug into that life? So I'd like to just give you a little metaphor as we begin our conversation today. And I encourage, by the way, any of you to interrupt me, stop me. Caroline can pop in if you throw something into the chat. I want this, even though we're on Zoom, to feel like we're in the same room together. So please, by all means, ask questions, interrupt, and let's make this a dialogue. But there's a wonderful book out, it just came out fairly recently, called From Strength to Strength, which is Arthur Brooks's new book, where in one of his chapters, he talks about the concept of Eastern approaches to art and Western approaches to art. And in the Western approach to art, which I'm very familiar with, you walk into your local museum and you walk down the hallway and you see a sculpture at the end of the hallway. And it's a beautiful sculpture and the sun is glinting off of it. And you walk up to it and you appreciate it for its beauty and its majesty. In the Eastern approach to art, there is a focus on the block of stone that existed before the sculpture was even created, that sculpture exists within that block of stone already. It's fully formed inside the block of stone, and it's the sculptor's job to chip away the stone to reveal the sculpture that already exists inside. In many ways, as I have followed this incredible journey of positive psychology and courage leading to an upward spiral of joy and freedom and self-expression, I really see our lives very much the same way. Like we each have inside of us this life that is vibrant and vulnerable and brave and adventurous and embracing of awe and transcendency, gratitude and forgiveness. And our job, our sacred quest, is to chip away at the stone that has built up around that sculpture. In my mind, that stone has been created through past experiences, as I said, traumas, our sense of fear of shame or rejection, the kind of things that build up around it. And our goal, therefore, is to chip away at it, revealing this vibrant life where we're connecting and adventuring and living our most flourishing lives. That, to me, is this essential quest that we are all on. And to me, the instrument to chip away that stone is courage. And I will get to why I believe that and how courage and fear interrelate. And then I'd like to tell you a couple stories from the book that I think and I hope will illuminate some of this and maybe even reflect something from your own life. So I'd like to begin just by telling you a little bit about me and why this became such a powerful experience for me. I grew up here where I am in Cleveland, Ohio, the shortest, shyest kid in my grade. I was really impacted by two bullies that lived on my street that had a really, really strong impact on me. As you all know, if you've been bullied in your past or have had a child or a grandchild that has been bullied, it is very insidious, mainly because bullying creates a sense of shame. We oftentimes, those of us who have been bullied, don't share with anybody what is happening to us. And I can tell you, when I was in elementary school, I didn't. I kept all of that to myself. I kept my bruises, both my physical bruises and my emotional bruises, to myself. Didn't tell my family, didn't tell anybody. But what it did was really make my life small. I really wanted my life to be almost invisible, because when you're invisible, you don't get hurt. No one punches you when they don't notice you. And so for most of my childhood, I remained in this box of near invisibility. And it wasn't until after I graduated from college, I was working in a record store. Although I graduated with a degree in English literature from a great school, I had no plan. I did not know what to do with my life. And I still was operating under this sense of feeling small and needing to feel small. And I was given an opportunity. It was a shot in the dark, but was given the opportunity to travel overseas to teach English to Holocaust survivors in Israel for a year. And something inside of me said, take this opportunity. And I accepted. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I packed up a big backpack and I flew from Cleveland to JFK, and I was waiting for my flight, and I bought a little Mead spiral notebook. I don't know if any of you remember those Mead spiral notebooks that we all had in school. And I put it in my backpack, and I got on this El Al flight from Cleveland to, from JFK to Ben Gurion Airport in Israel. And as the plane took off, I had a panic attack. I thought to myself, there is no way that I can do this. I don't know the language. I don't know the family that I'm living with. I'm unprepared in every possible way. And I started to sweat and my heart started to pound. And I was already thinking about how could I get off the plane and turn around and come back. And something in the midst of all of that panic changed something in me. I pulled out this spiral notebook and a pen, and like it came from someplace else, I wrote down 8 words into that spiral notebook. And those 8 words were, Do one thing every day that scares you. Do one thing every day that scares you. You've probably heard that phrase. It's often attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt. I don't know where it came from, but it tumbled out of my pen onto that page. And I knew what that meant for me. It meant every day for the next year, I would do something that pushed my comfort zone. And I took it as a mandate, as a directive. And every day that following year, I would find some small way, even if it was smiling at a stranger or walking into a post office for the first time. And later on, climbing Mount Sinai or going diving into deep water. But every single day, I found an opportunity to push my comfort zone, and I would write it back in that spiral notebook. And that year changed my life. It literally changed my self-conception. I went from being someone who ran from fear to someone who chased fear, who chased discomfort, who chased opportunities to push myself, because I saw the fruits of my discomfort. I had wonderful relationships. I had adventures. I found people of different faiths that I could talk to. I learned, I grew. And as we all know, we're all lovers of positive psychology, that when you're in that, when you have that Carol Dweck growth mindset where you know you can change and you know you can get better, to me, the key that unlocked all of that was doing one thing every day that scared me. So that changed my whole conception. I came back home absolutely on fire. I began to push comfort zones consistently. And, not long after that, I attended that yoga workshop that led to meeting Tal, and really getting immersed in the concepts of positive psychology. I just knew that not only did I find my theology, I found my people. I knew sitting in that room with 120 people studying positive psychology that I had found my people. And it became something that was really, really positive for me. I want to step back for 1 second and tell you about one episode of my childhood and then something that I did about it that created what is now called Scare Your Soul. And I want you to think about, as you're listening to me, maybe a similar experience maybe that you had with an authority figure when you were in school. So when I was in 4th grade, I was in our school choir, and we were preparing for our school's holiday concert. Do you all remember those holiday concerts where we all prepped? And of course, I was the shortest one. So when there was a line of kids, they would always line up the kids the tallest first, and they would come out first and weave their way onto the risers. I was always last because I was the shortest kid. And the extravaganza of this choir concert was singing 76 trombones from the Music Man. Can you picture that? And I was given one solo line in this song. And every time the class would start our practice and singing this song, and every time that they came around to me, I flubbed the line. My throat closed up and I couldn't sing it. And each time the substitute choir director would start over from the beginning. So the entire grade had to start over because of me. By the 3rd time that I messed up this line, when I could barely even speak or sing, he got angry and he kind of moved towards me, and he was wearing this Hawaiian shirt. I remember this red Hawaiian shirt with these big palm trees on it, even though it was December in Ohio and freezing cold. And he ran towards me almost and said, you cannot sing. Why don't you just mouth the words from now on? And I can tell you that was one of the most defining moments of my childhood. I turned bright red. I couldn't move. I felt like a statue. And for 35 years, I never sang again. After meeting Tal, after experiencing the beauties and complexities of positive psychology, I decided that I was going to tackle that demon that had arrived that day in fourth grade. My way of doing that was to sing in front of a busy restaurant with a line of people waiting out in front, and to do so on a busy brunch Sunday morning. I brought my guitar and I opened it up and I started singing in front of a line of strangers who were lined up in front of this very, very busy and popular restaurant. And I assure you, I was awful, absolutely terrible. I have an atrocious singing voice, but that wasn't the point. The point was how I felt afterwards. Even though people first started to feel kind of annoyed and why is this guy singing and he's terrible, they started to kind of rally behind me. They knew that I was trying. And I remember a young kid crumpled up a dollar bill and threw it into my guitar case and everybody laughed. And my sister, who was there, who has a beautiful voice, came and joined me and sang. And that feeling that I had afterwards, as I put my guitar back in my case and I grabbed it and I started to walk back to my car, it was almost like I wanted to levitate back to my car. I felt free and powerful and joyous. That feeling to me is what Scare Your Soul is all about. That feeling of stepping into discomfort in a way that it unlocks something inside of you that needs to be unlocked. I came back, I wrote a single Facebook post about my experience back when Facebook was a little friendlier. And I posted it, assuming maybe that some friends would want to maybe the next weekend do what I had just done. And instead, the post went viral. It was shared around the world. I had people from multiple countries email me, text me, DM me saying, I want to do my thing next weekend. What can I do? What can I do to push my comfort zone? And that began what is now Scare Your Soul, which is a very organic, free, positive psychology-based courage movement that is basically challenging people every week to push their comfort zone in some way. We send out an email every Wednesday, and we have ambassadors now that are across, well, they're mainly in the United States, but now we're starting to get ambassadors from around the world who are all volunteer, who want to push forward this very positive psychology-centric message of, if you step consistently into discomfort, you will do two things. One, you will fail. When we try new things, it doesn't always work out exactly the way that we want. That's very important, that it's not about the outcome, that it's about the action, but that also you're going to experience things on the other side of that that will change your life. You will achieve levels of connection, of growth, of creativity, of innovation, of forgiveness, of gratitude, of mind-body enhancement. And each chapter of my book talks about how to push comfort zones in those different areas of life. And I'll get a little bit more specific about that. But all of a sudden, Scare Your Soul took off, and people from around the world started to do our challenges. And then they started to say to me, you know, I just started my own business for the first time, or I had a tough conversation with a loved one. I got a phone call one time from one of our ambassadors who lives in Long Beach, California, who told me that she was pushing a stroller, and in the stroller was a Scare Your Soul baby. So I said, I have no idea what you mean by that. Could you please explain what a Scare Your Soul baby is? And she told me that one of our challenges was to have a tough conversation with a loved one. She decided to have a tough conversation with the man who was then her husband. And the tough conversation was, it's just not working. All of the therapy and marital work that they had done, it was not working, and it was time for them to separate. She had been putting it off, decided to have it. He actually agreed, and they had a separation and then got divorced, and it was a hard time. But one of the people who showed up in her life to help her through this hard time was her old high school boyfriend who had moved to Long Beach. They reconnected, and you can probably guess what happened. Yes, they ended up getting married and had a baby. And so she called and told me that the baby that she was pushing was the Scare Your Soul baby that was a result, in a circuitous way, but a result of that tough conversation that she had that chosen to have. And sometimes in life, all we need is that little push. So I consider myself one of the luckiest people in the entire world. I get to help other people tackle courageous acts in their own lives, and had really the most magical thing happen. I had been back to Kripalu, and I had done some studying with Sharon Salzberg. I don't know if any of you know Sharon Salzberg. She is, I see clapping and thumbs up all across the screen. She is one of the most important people in my life. And I was in a mindfulness meditation weekend with her, came back, COVID had hit, and I had decided to lead meta meditations online for anybody that was struggling through the pandemic and that wanted a sense of love and of centeredness at that very challenging time. And I was doing it every week, again, all, for free on Zoom if anybody wanted to sign up. And in December of 2020, I was about to lead a meditation. I was getting myself ready. I was in an empty yoga studio. It was all dark except for me and my computer. And there was an email that popped up on my phone as I was about to begin. And the email said, "Hi, Scott. My name is Nana Tumwasi. I am a VP and editor at Hachette Books. I have found your website and think what you are doing is really important. Would you be interested in writing a book?" Now, I'm going to be very honest with this august group that is on this webinar today. I deleted that email because I thought it was spam. 3 days later, something in the back of my head said, pull out that email and see what that is. So I went into my trash folder, if you can imagine, my email trash folder, and I found it and sent it to a friend of mine, Paula McLean, who's a beautiful author. She wrote The Paris Wife, if any of you have read that book, as well as many others. And she said to me, "You dummy. That is one of the greatest publishing houses in the entire world, and that is their new VP and editor of all of their self-help and wellness books. If you don't respond in 30 seconds, I'm coming over and responding for you." That led to discussions with Nana, my editor, Hachette, signing a book contract, spending 7 months. They gave me 7 months to write 70,000 words, all about courage, positive psychology, love, connection, growth, forgiveness. And I spent those 7 months writing. That's a whole nother webinar in itself about what it is like to write. I'm sure many people on this webinar have either written or have written short form. It is probably has been the greatest challenge in my life, but now I'm happy to say, as of this past Tuesday, I walked into a Barnes and Noble, and there it was on the shelf. So miracles do happen and dreams do come true. And when you plug into your passion, amazing things happen. So that's a little bit of my story. I hope it wasn't too long for all of you, but it gives you a sense of how much positive psychology has played a role in my work and the work of Scare Your Soul, which is, I think, an evolving and vibrant place for people to participate, to do our challenges, to share ideas, to become ambassadors. We have WhatsApp groups where for 2-week stretches, people around the world share one thing they did that day that was courageous with everybody else in the WhatsApp group. That's it, just one thing that they did that day. And it is one of the most inspiring things that you could ever imagine. Imagine a gratitude practice, except with courage. So I encourage you, if you're interested, to just go to scareyoursoul.com. Love to have you be one of our free members. And then I'd like to tell you very quickly 3 short stories from the book. And I'd like to do that because I think that these stories highlight what I hope for you will be a takeaway, so that when we end our hour together, that you feel like you are empowered to tackle things in your life that maybe are sitting on the periphery, they're sitting under the rug, they're sitting in the zone of procrastination or fear, and maybe there's a place for you to step into that. And I'd like to tell you these 3 quick stories in hopes that they may inspire you in some way. So the first story that I'd like to tell you is about Johanna. Johanna was born in Beverly Hills. She grew up in a very vibrant household. Her dad was an agent and her mom was a writer, and she was a born performer. She loved to tumble and dance and tell jokes. Literally, adults wanted her at every party because she just made people laugh. And her dad was a big basketball fan, so he would take her to Lakers games, and he would sit there watching the team, of course, as everybody else was. But the person that wasn't watching the team was Johanna, because the people she loved to watch were the cheerleaders. She loved cheerleaders, their athleticism, their vibrance, their performance, their ability to entertain. And she would even create little play-by-plays in her mind as they were jumping. And she would say, Joe, that was a great jump. They could have gone a little bit further on that twist, but oh no, that was great. They could do it again, etc. She loved it. And I will tell you on this call that Johanna did not have the body type growing up, as she would describe it, that was acceptable in her school to be a cheerleader. She ended up leaving that school, went to another school that didn't have a cheerleading program. So her entire childhood, she was never able to fulfill that dream. When I met Johanna, she was 53, divorced, a mother of 3, and she was reeling from a bout of cancer that was in remission, but she was exhausted. She was working as a nurse, helping people who were living in horrendous life situations, and using, by the way, much of her own resources to buy items to help her patients on her own with her own money. And she came to me and said, Scare Your Soul sounds amazing. Could I do a challenge? And I said, of course you can. We're all human. We all want to encourage each other to step into a moment of courage. So she called me back freaking out because she had called and left a message for the athletic director of a local high school, a big one, and said on this message, my name is Johanna, I'm 53, and I was wondering if you would allow me to be a cheerleader for a day. She freaked out even more when he called back and said, we would love it. The girls love it. The cheerleading coach loves it. Come next week. We want you to practice with the team, which she did. She practiced for a week with the Shaker Heights, which is a local, a neighborhood of Cleveland, Shaker Heights High School cheerleading team, all the 15, 16, 17-year-olds, and Johanna at 53. And she told me later that one of her biggest concerns coming out of that week was, would she fit into a size 16 cheerleading uniform? And I tear up every time I mention that they gave her a cheerleading uniform the night before the big game, and it fit her perfectly. The next morning, she went out. The big game was packed, hundreds of people in the stands, and she had a crisis of confidence. I can't do this. I'm going to fail. My kids are going to be mocked. But somehow she did it. She pinned her hair up in a bun. She has this beautiful black curly hair, pinned it up in a bun, and ran out onto the field with the rest of these 15, 16, 17-year-old cheerleaders. They ran out to the center of the field and turned around to look at the crowd where she saw every single person standing up and giving her a standing ovation. When Johanna told me that story, I knew that there was a tremendous lesson in that story. And it's very similar to the lesson that I had singing in front of that busy restaurant that morning. There was something that she needed to overcome. I call it the Johanna moment, that there is something inside each one of us where somebody in our past had said, you can't do this, you can't be this, you can't achieve this. And sometimes it's time to take our power back. Sometimes it's time to sing in front of that busy restaurant or to be a cheerleader for a day. So that is my story about my dear friend, Johanna, who is absolutely one of the most delightful people you could ever imagine, as you can probably tell from my story. My second story from the book is about a woman named Carly. I received an email one day about 7 years ago, and it said to me, "Hi, Scott, my name is Carly. You don't know me, but I'd like to come to your house this Saturday night at 10 o'clock and talk to you. Would that be okay?" Okay, how do you deal with that? Who is this person? I did not know her. She wants to come over to my house at 10 p.m. What is going to happen? And I went again on our beloved Facebook, and I found out that indeed Carly does exist. She, from what I could tell, was happy, a married mom of 3 kids. And I thought to myself, you know what? I have a degree in positive psychology. I have a growth mindset. I want to push myself into an area of discomfort. Say yes, which I did. So that next Saturday night, Carly knocked on my front door and I opened it up, and there she was, beautiful, long blonde hair. She had tattoos kind of trailing down both arms, and she was wearing ripped jeans and a white t-shirt. And she came in and she sat on my couch and said to me that she was not that happy person that I thought I had seen on social media. She was in the middle of a divorce. She was deeply, deeply unhappy. Her youngest son was at NIH. At that point, she thought that he might be suffering from a terminal illness. She was distraught. And she said to me, "I know that you did this positive psychology thing. I know you did this happiness thing. I know you run a courage movement. I need to talk to you. I want to feel better. I want to feel happier." We talked for 3 hours on my couch. We became soul brother and sister that night. And as she was leaving my house, we talked about many, many things. If you get the book or borrow it from your library, I tell all of the things that Carly and I talked about that night that bonded us. And as she was leaving, she said to me, "You know, this is going to be a hell of a week for me. It's going to be really hard. We had talked all about gratitude, by the way, which many of you who are positive psychology aficionados know the power of gratitude. And I had talked about gratitude in our discussion. And she said, "Would you send me 5 gratitudes just by text for the next week? And I'll do the same. You send me 5, I'll send you 5 each night this week." And I said, "Sure, absolutely. I know the power of gratitude. I'm happy to do it." And she said, "But we can't repeat. Don't repeat. Like, don't say, you know, my kids, and then the next night say the same thing." So I said, fine. So we did. And for that first week, we shared 5 gratitudes every night by text, each night before bedtime. And I loved it so much. It made me become what Tal Ben-Shahar and the other positive psychologists call a benefit finder. Some of you may be familiar with that phrase, benefit finding, because when you write in a gratitude journal or have a gratitude practice, you actually spend your days looking for gratitude, and it changes your entire mindset. And I loved it. And we did those 5 gratitudes that didn't repeat every night that week. And at the end of it, she said, "Would you want to do it another week?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" To date, we have been sending 5 gratitudes to each other each night for 7 years. We have sent each other 13,000 individual gratitudes, which I'm sure you can imagine has changed my entire life. Why do I tell you this story? The power of consistent action. It is like running a marathon or a triathlon, jumping into a pool and swimming or going for a run is a great thing, but it will not help you compete a marathon or a triathlon. In my mind, it is about small acts of positive, consistent action. In my relationship with Carly, it's all about gratitude. What I have come to learn is when you have a courage practice, when you do one thing every day that scares you, just like I wrote in that Mead spiral notebook that I put in my backpack, you start to achieve shifts in your life. When you have a Post-it note that you put on your mirror in the morning that says, do one thing today that scares you, you start leading your life like a benefit finder. You start looking for those little moments in life where you feel that sense of butterflies in your stomach, a little sense of tightness, right? We all know that in positive psychology, focus on the mind body is so important. Where do you feel those moments of tightness? Where do you feel like, gosh, I want to ask that person out to lunch, but they intimidate me, or I want to do something for this person, but I feel uncomfortable. What's going to happen? I want to share this new idea at work, but I'm afraid people will laugh at me. All of those moments, if we can just step into just one every single day, think about what life looks like on the other side. So that's what I call my Carly moment. Can we engage in small, consistent actions where we push our comfort zone? And what does life look like afterwards? That's my second quick story. Here's my third, and then we'll go into maybe just a couple practical applications, and then I'll answer questions. And then if any of you, by the way, want to reach out to me afterwards, please, by all means, do so. I'm happy to talk about any of this. As you can tell, it's my passion in life, so happy to do so. My third story is a story about a woman named Jen. I was, as I mentioned before, I am divorced. I have 2 children. And a number of years ago, I went on a dating app and met a wonderful, wonderful woman named Jen. She was a realtor who split her time between Florida and Ohio, where I live. And she's a wine lover and just a fun, interesting person. We connected and said, why don't we go on a date? So we said to each other, we'll meet at a wine bar. And it was a colossal series of disasters. I got lost on the way to the wine bar. I couldn't find a parking space, and I had to run 8 blocks to get to the wine bar. So I was sweating, I was late, I was stressed. And by the time I got there, she was sitting on a bar stool, unhappy, I'm sure. And when she slid off of the bar stool, I'm about 5'8" on a good day, and she was about 6'1". So I kind of looked up at her and said, like, oh my gosh, like everything about this date is unexpected and is not going well. And so we ended up having what I would consider to be a superficial conversation for a couple of hours. I know I was thinking to myself, I just want this to end. I think she was too. But at the end, there was a little crack. She told me that she was in Cleveland, our hometown, because she had been diagnosed with brain cancer and that she was in treatment and wanted to be near her family. We both softened a little bit and gave each other a hug. And I thought as we walked out, I would never see her again. 2 weeks later, our Scare Your Soul Challenge of the week was to do Arthur Aaron's 36 questions. I'm assuming many of you have heard of Arthur Aaron and his 36 famous questions that increase intimacy between 2 people. If you haven't, please Google it and do the 36 questions with somebody. Our challenge was to do 36 questions with a stranger, someone you did not know well. And I called Jen. We had a wonderful experience over the course of an hour. She brought a bottle of wine to my house. I'm not surprised. And we did the 36 questions. And in 1 hour, we were bonded, just like Carly and I, for life. My takeaway from that experience was 2 hours of superficial conversation gave us almost nothing, but 1 hour of deep, vulnerable, connected conversation bonded us as friends. When my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer a couple weeks following that experience. She went into overdrive looking for ideas, holistic treatments for my dad. When I was diagnosed with tinnitus, which is ringing of the ears, I'm slowly losing my hearing and going deaf. She went into overdrive looking for ways to help me lessen my tinnitus. She was so giving in the middle of all of her treatments. I'm very sad to say that she passed away about 2 years ago. But her memory reminds me that when we have the chance to go deep, when we have the chance to be vulnerable, when we have the chance to be courageous in our connection with other human beings in our lives, do it. Do it. And you will reap rewards far beyond what you can imagine. So those are 3 stories. Thank you, Caroline, for putting in all of the information about Arthur Aron. The book, which I'm so proud of, is a mix of stories like those, writing prompts, reflections, space for writing in the book itself. It almost is like Daring Greatly and The Artist's Way had a baby. This is the baby. Well, I'm being very immodest by saying that, but that's my hope, is that this is the baby. But when you read it, and if you get it from the library, you can go online. We have a special online journal where you can do all the reflections and challenges online. That the book gives you practical applications each and every day to push your comfort zones in your body, your mind, your sense of gratitude, your sense of forgiveness, your sense of curiosity. And it has been honestly an honor of a lifetime to delve deeply into this world. What I didn't mention on this call, which I think again is another webinar unto itself, is how our fear response works in our bodies, how our bodies trend towards homeostasis. Many of you, of course, are aware of the hedonic treadmill and the way that our bodies trend towards status quo, and why it's so hard for us to overcome the fear response and our trend out of homeostasis. But that when we do it with each other in community, when we do it with an accountability partner who supports us, when we do it with, as my dear friend and mentor, Maria Sirois, who is a positive psychology guru, talks about your choir, those people who surround you and support you. When you do it with your choir supporting you, we can lead that vibrant, fascinating, adventurous life that is that statue inside the block of stone. That exists within all of us right now. And with consistent action every single day, micro action, stepping into discomfort, we can chip away that stone and reveal that beautiful statue that's inside of all of us. So with that, I'll say thank you very much for listening to my long explanation of why I'm so passionate about this and what this book is hopefully unlocking for people. I mentioned to Caroline, we had a book launch the other night, and it was one of the most magical nights of my life. Seeing people connect and being vulnerable and really finding themselves again, not because of me, but because of them, because they see the light that exists within themselves and a path forward, not by jumping out of airplanes or quitting jobs and moving to another city, but just by taking small active steps into discomfort, is one of the most magical things that has ever happened to me. So thank you all so much. I'm happy to answer any questions in the last 10 minutes that we have. And just thank you very much. I'm so appreciative.
Scott, wow. I am very moved by your stories, and who you are. So, and I know that I can see some nods on the call as well. Ellen, I want to take your question, but before we go there, I wasn't wondering about this invisibility, right? And that if it's related to the negativity bias, right? Your desire as a kid to be invisible. And I think some of us especially know what that's like when we're under threat, right? We talk about Maslow and also wanting to be safe, right? And how like, gosh, if I just disappear, then I'll be okay. How is that related to and coming out of that, the negativity bias or even fixed mindset?
Yeah, to me, I'm sure the negativity bias plays a role in it, because the negativity bias is there for very much the same reason. It keeps us safe, right? That's why the negativity bias exists. It keeps us from treading into territory because of aberrant optimism that we're going to put ourselves in psychological or physical danger. I find the negativity bias absolutely fascinating. To me, it was a sense of just sheer safety, that the more I put myself out there, the more somebody else was going to find me and hurt me. And I think when you are in the arena of shame, and I don't think bullying is just the tip of the iceberg. When we are in that arena of shame that, Brene Brown and others talk about so beautifully, we keep it to ourselves. So we don't enlist Maria Serrois' choir. We don't enlist the catalysts in our life. We just recede. And when you recede and it's just you, that's a very small space. And I lived in that small space for a very long time. And it took me having that crazy epiphany on that airplane, where I had a panic attack and there was no way out. There was no one to save me. And I had to find a way. And my way was those small acts. And that's, Alex Korb talks about the downward spiral and the upward spiral. That to me reversed that downward spiral, and day in and day out enhanced that upward spiral. And that's where I want to be. That's where I want all of you to be, because that's where joy and freedom and connection and flourishing and service. I mean, we didn't even talk on this webinar at all. I didn't talk about this webinar about service and the courage that it takes to serve other people. We didn't talk about kindness and the amount of kindness that is required for ourselves, to be kind to ourselves, and the courage that is required not to be kind to other people, which is wonderful, but to be kind to ourselves. And what does that look like? And how much courage does that take? So moving out of that space of invisibility into speaking your truth and to being your authentic self does require courage, but that's where we all need to be.
And then there was a question, Alex, who for the downward spiral? Because Barbara Fredrickson
so
takes
right.
us.
So and I hate if Barbara was the originator of that concept, I give my
No, that's okay. Let's Alex
Korb, Korb, has a wonderful book about the upward spiral and how we can he does not talk specifically about courage. That's it. Correct. He doesn't talk about courage specifically. I happen to think that a courage practice, just like a gratitude practice, a meditation practice, a yoga practice, is a practice. But, Maya Angelou talks about courage as the most critical virtue, because all other virtues are built on top of courage, that courage unlocks all the other virtues. So to me, it's like that essential, like if Maslow created another hierarchy, courage would be at the bottom level of that pyramid.
I love it. We've got Elaine that wanted to ask a question, and I'm going to go ahead and spotlight her so she can do that.
Okay, thank you. I just want to first say that these positive hours have been my lifesaver all during COVID. And once now I'm back to teaching Let Your Yoga Dance actually on Tuesdays. The only reason that I am here is because I have COVID. So this is such a wonderful gift that I have been able to be a part of this, and thank you. And it was going back to Kripalu, it was, I went one time to Kripalu and had a yoga dance. That time it was Dance Kinetics with Mega, and that sold me on becoming a teacher. And that was my out of my comfort zone. And I did that, and I felt very courageous. And I've been teaching since 2007. But it's funny because I put that in a little box, but on other parts of my life, I don't feel like I take risks or I'm courageous. I feel like that was my thing for courage. And I love the idea of doing something, even if it's something small every day. So I really want to invest more into that because I really feel like I don't take risks. And I try to take the easy way out of things. So I appreciate it. The one good thing about having COVID, I got to see you.
Yes.
So
Well,
thank
we're
you.
sorry that you have COVID, but we're glad that you're with us today.
Yeah.
And
Thank
thank you for sharing your story. When you do you have worked that muscle. The muscle already exists within you.
Right.
You just need to consistently apply it to the other areas of your life. And I will tell you that once you start to get those little wins, for me, a lot of it was social. I have a lot of social anxiety. So for me, it was a lot of, can I talk to a stranger? Can I buy a cup of coffee for a stranger? Can I step into that space? And then once you do it, it kind of becomes addictive. Like you want to put yourself in that space over and over and over again. And that's that upward spiral.
Right.
Right.
Well, from Mega, that led to positive psychology, and I was in the SIP4 program. So,
Oh, that's
that
great. And
area,
Mega is
I can
Mega is a
I can do
beautiful,
that,
beautiful human.
but I don't
Yes.
like to go on roller coasters or skydive or those things. I have
I-
to I'll take little steps.
Yeah, little steps. And I think little steps of courage make a
Right.
difference. Patrice has a question. Let me go to
Thank
her.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see. Go ahead and
Hi.
unmute.
Yes. I have a personal question for you because I'm the type of person that when I start one thing, I have to see it through. I can't not finish it. When you were writing, were you able to also do your meditation weekly with that you were doing your website?
Oh, honestly, I don't think I would have survived if I didn't. I think it is such a critical. Writing is when Paula McLean introduced me the other night, and she's written, I think, 5 or 6 books, and she talks about that incredible, like, desperate fear of the blinking cursor every morning or the blank page every morning where you have to start with nothing. And I think without a meditation practice supporting that and keeping me calm and being able to breathe and being able to think and being able to know when self-care was important and I needed it, I'm not sure that I would have finished and I was only given 7 months to complete. So I had to do it. So it was absolutely critical. Self-care is so critical to our ability to be courageous in life. We can't do it unless we have energy, clarity, and have the resources. It's like a great yoga practice.
Right.
A great yoga practice will support everything else in life. It is that foundational component. For me, meditation is very much the same way.
Thank you for that question, Patrice. That's great. In the chat, we have Deb, I think, that said there are some people who are just so scared to go out of their comfort zone and to take the first step. How do they approach that? How can we hold their hand or make that easier?
So, I delve deeply into that in the book. I think it's simple to say it. It's not simple to do it, but it is think micro steps. It is almost like, I remember Tal used to tell us that you can start creating change by brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand, right? Like, you don't have to go out and conquer something. And I tell the story of Johanna as a great illustration, but what she did was fairly extravagant, right? Like, becoming a cheerleader for a day was a massive shift for her. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be small actions. And maybe for you, being courageous is getting out of bed in the morning. Mm-hmm. Maybe being courageous is walking in nature by yourself and just being with your thoughts. You start small, start micro, but pay attention to it. Feel proud of it. Feel like you're making a shift, because you are making a shift. So again, I hate to keep on mentioning the book, but there are dozens and dozens and dozens of practices in the book about how to start in all of these various categories: gratitude and awe and forgiveness and transcendence and etc. But the key is, don't feel like you need to do something huge. Do something small and then build on it.
And here's a great question. What if the person who instills fear, AKA your choir master, follows you throughout your life? Example, abusive sibling, parent, or spouse.
That is a superb question. And, it is, and it's very hard to answer it, because I think you need to go case by case. I need to understand exactly what your situation is, why that continues to happen. Is there a way to create a barrier between you and that? I think that there is a real struggle that we all go through with trauma, both past trauma and vicarious trauma, and trauma that continues on in our lives. The only thing that I can say, and I really say this as a layperson, not as a clinician in any way, is the stronger that we can make ourselves, the stronger that we can work our own courage muscle in other areas of life, the stronger we will be when we are confronting those tremendous challenges. I talk about in the book, when I was 9 years old, my cousin was killed in a car accident, and it changed my way of perceiving crossing streets. Many, many years later, when my daughter was in 7th grade, one of her friends walking outside our house was hit by an SUV in front of our home. And I had to stand over her body, holding traffic away on both sides. And I don't think, if I had not done all of my courage work over the years, consistently worked that muscle, I don't know what I would have done in that moment, but I can tell you it prepared me for that moment, that I knew what I needed to do. I view myself as a courageous person, even though I'm a flawed human being that has a negativity bias and all those tremendous complexities that we all have. But I worked the muscle, and I was ready, and I was strong. And Sophie, who was hit by the SUV, is now a sophomore at the College of Charleston and is vibrant and healthy and doing great. Awesome. But so my comment to you is, work that muscle in every other aspect of your life if you can, and then get help wherever you can in dealing with that particular situation.
Beautifully said. We've got a couple of things to let you guys know about. Number one, Maria Serra, I get to interview her tomorrow on hope, false hope, and healthy hope. She is going to be on Broadway's Best for Parkinson's, which is a show that's open to anyone. It's completely free. And for those of you that are interested in Broadway, David Loud will be there, Kathleen and Boyd Gaines, a lot of Broadway folks who are actually living very courageously with Parkinson's. And that is kind of what the show is about, hope. So I hope you guys will join us. I put a link in the chat, and Maria is kind of going to guide us through that and open up the evening and talk to us about what the context for hope, just as you have, Scott. I'm not surprised at all that she is somebody that you admire and work with. Tal Ben-Shahar said, of course, permission to be human, and Maria, permission to be magnificent. And you are both of those. And I thank you so much. I hope you will come back. I think that it would be wonderful to talk about how the fear response works in our bodies and why it's so hard for us to overcome fear. I also have a dream. Sharon Salzberg has been in our at the JCC, loves the JCC. It'd be fun to have the two of you come and do something together too.
I would love it.
So let's dream together and make some magic happen. And I encourage everybody to sign up for Scott's website. I put it in the chat. I can do that again. And of course, I will see you next week on the Positive Psychology Hour. Big thanks to the Whole Being Institute and to Phoebe Atkinson for curating our this hour. And it turns out it is 3 years in March 2022 that we will have been doing the, thank you, Nancy, for correcting me. And adding that in, that we will have been doing the Positive Psychology Hour. So Scott, thank you for being a guest. It's just been wonderful to hear you speak. And I know I'm forever changed. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Take care, everybody. See you later. Yes, and Broadway Best will be available on Facebook later, and we will send this recording to anybody that signed up today, and also that one as well. Thanks, everybody.